youth. Ollie once showed us a slide of a pub in Italy, and he said that that was the night when the whole idea for the International Migration Institute was born. Do you remember that evening?
Yes, indeed I do. Yeah, that is really the origins of the sort of concrete design and kind of vision of the IMI was formed in the pub in Italy, but really it was in response to effectively a call to create a new institute. So I believe it was early 2005. I was then director of Compass, and Stephen Castles was director of Refugee Studies. Mm-hmm. And it was during those times that James Martin was having his initial discussions with the university as towards possibly giving a large grant and setting up the school and so forth. And it was James Martin that, amongst his many interests, suggested something along the lines of migration. He didn't give any concrete guidance or something, but said that migration was one of the future global issues that he had interest in. And also at that time, Nigel Thrift, excuse me, was the head of the social science division, and so he was very much involved in some of the negotiations with James Martin and setting up of this school. So I believe it was on maybe a Friday that Nigel Thrift called Stephen Castles and I in as the directors of the two migration-related centers, and basically said, put us in the picture as to James Martin and the possibly donation and setting up of the school and so forth. And Nigel said, James Martin is interested in migration, and so we would like there to be a migration center or institute as part of the James Martin School. So you, Stephen, and Steve, could you go away and write us a new institute by Tuesday? And so Stephen and I, we're both living in Italy, so we said, okay, well, let's meet at our local, and over a couple of jars, write a new institute. And one of the key ideas, of course, was to look at the scope and research program of Compass, and likewise the scope of RSC, and to create a new institute that would be, of course, complementary to those. We didn't want to recreate the wheel or have overlap and so forth. Each center had its own remit and so forth, its own funding and so forth. So the idea was to get something new, and of course to fit in with the James Martin School's remit of looking at big issues of the future and so forth. And so therefore we came up with IMI. Mm-hmm.
So what vision did you have for the Institute when it began?
Right, well, we wanted to have this kind of global scope, a more macro perspective on things. But of course that's a tall order just to instantly dive into the macro. But that was really part of the end game. Look at the big picture movements and dynamics and so forth. But we thought start small, start only with Africa. Because we both felt that, the Institute should be international, should be looking at places which were underrepresented in the field of migration studies, and certainly Africa was, and I would say still is to a large extent. And so that was our first remit, to look at migration flows within Africa, and then of course migration flows between Africa and Europe to start with, and eventually look to branch out. But
so how many people worked for it in those early days? I guess you had to start looking for people and recruiting.
Well, yeah, that's right. It was sort of, Stephen and I and those couple of pints on the table in the pub to start with. But of course, once the whole James Martin School kicked in and the IMI was, as it were, sort of accepted or supported as part of that, then we could advertise. And we started out with just, two main researcher positions that we advertised, and we're lucky to get Hein de Haas and Ali Bakewell. And then there was a third position, a senior position. And as we were putting together the job description for that, really to be a key person to again help lead the vision and so forth, Stephen looked at that job description and said, actually this sounds very good, and he had, you know, only X number of years until retirement. So I believe it was his decision. Again, you need to talk with him and get his view. But my recollection is his decision to say, I would rather finish off my active career doing research, doing what he does best. And you know, he was laden with administration like any director of a center. So he actually applied for that position amongst an international field, but it's hard to compete with Steven Castles on matters of migration, and he got the job.
Did you expect it to grow as much as it has done in recent years?
We always had high hopes and so forth. The James Martin money, as it was guaranteed, you know, initially for X number of years, and that was our first horizon. Of course, we were going to apply for more money, and we immediately put together proposals for the MacArthur Foundation and so forth. But really, that money, that was our first big proposal and big tranche of money. But as people will know, that money wasn't to staff the IMI, it was to create networks and support migration researchers in Africa. And so, coming back around to the question, no, I mean, I suppose some of the initial ideas were, you know, to have this core team and to do a lot of the research out there and support people out there doing it rather than being here. But then, yeah, since both Steven and I have gone on to other matters, yeah, it is, you know, not a shock, but astounding at how it's grown and the success rate. And yeah.
I guess we've done both of those things because we have obviously been building up the capacity of networks of researchers in Africa as well as growing this side. So that's exciting. What do you think are some of the main advances in the academic field of migration studies over the years since IMI was set up?
That's interesting. Well, during the years IMI was set up, I would say that the you know, what's now just generally known as the transnational approach was really coming into its own, and now that's absolutely standard approach. One always looks at migration now in terms of sending and receiving areas and so forth. So that's really come on board. Some of the data sources have gotten better, but I think if you talk to any migration numbers person, immediately they're going to say that the numbers are still one of the biggest problems. And so I would say that one thing that has gotten a lot better over the years, I'd say, is interdisciplinarity. I wouldn't say that in the field of migration studies we've absolutely cinched it, but I would think within the last 10 years the relationship between geography, anthropology, sociology, economics, political science, very much interrelated. And sometimes it's hard when you read, you know, an article in one of the top journals to actually know what field a person is actually trained in and coming from, because it's gotten so well integrated. I think that's a major development.
And just finally, do you have any thoughts about the future direction of IMI?
Well, hopefully from strength to strength. It's always the issue. Of course, you know, I hate to be so crude, but say, you know, the funding is always the issue, and core funding is one of the main issues. So, you know, long may the James Martin School, you know, run and hopefully support the IMI. But of course, it was always part of the school that there will be new institutes forming and so forth. The relationship with Compass and RSC, I gather, has become very strong, and the future relationship between those three and their funding sources and various projects, I think, will really tell the tale of the future of any single institute at Oxford.
Thank you very much.